My son-in-law carried a cardboard box past me like it was nothing, and inside it was my late wife's face. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up, because you need to understand who I was before you can grasp what almost happened to me. For 35 years, I ran Kingston High School. Every kid who walked through those doors on Broadway knew my name before their locker combination. I broke up fights, sat with troubled teens, and retired 10 years ago with a pension of $6,000 a month and a bronze plaque on the wall. Larry Parker, Principal, 1988 to 2016. When you spend 3 decades saving other people's kids, you think you have family figured out. I was dead wrong. Welcome to Dad's Ultimate Payback. Get comfortable, hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to hear every word of this. My wife Martha passed away 4 years ago from a sudden stroke. She used to make Sunday gravy in a heavy cast iron skillet, teaching our son Liam her secrets. I still keep her oil portrait over the mantel. She has that quiet half smile, like she's about to say something sharp. I lived alone on Hasbrouck Avenue in Kingston, New York, 2 blocks from the diner where Donna knows my order. A simple, predictable life. Then this past spring, my heart gave out while I was pulling weeds in the driveway. A crushing weight hit my chest, and I collapsed on the hot pavement. I woke up at Vassar Brothers Medical Center in Poughkeepsie, hooked to monitors. The doctor said I was lucky to be alive. My daughter Becky arrived first, crying at my bedside, while her husband Killian Donovan stood behind her with a steady hand on her shoulder. My son Liam was 3,000 miles away in Napa Valley, California, weeks away from opening his dream restaurant. The second Liam heard the news, he panicked, ready to fly back to New York immediately. Killian took the phone right out of Becky's hands. With a calm voice, he talked Liam down. "Liam, listen," Killian said. "You have a grand opening in 6 weeks. Becky and I are right here. We'll move your dad to our place in New Paltz and care for him. Focus on your future. That's what your dad wants." Liam agreed, deeply grateful to his brother-in-law. What neither Liam nor I knew was that Killian had already set a cold trap. That afternoon, while I was groggy on medication, Killian took my phone under the guise of charging it. He quietly blocked Liam's number and filtered out all calls or texts from my son. Then Killian called Liam back with fake concern. "Liam, the doctor said Dad's heart is extremely fragile. Hearing your voice could trigger another heart attack. Don't call him directly, pass everything through me." With a few lies, Killian cut off my direct line to my son, isolating me completely. When I was discharged, Killian and Becky brought me to their home in New Paltz. The first week went smoothly, but on day 9, Killian sat down with me at the kitchen table. "Larry, the house is too chaotic for your recovery," he said softly. "The kids are loud and you need quiet. We fixed up the detached garage. It's insulated and heated. It'll be like your own private apartment." Becky smiled from the doorway, holding a dish towel. "Dad, it's really cozy out there, I promise. And it gives us time to fix up the guest room for when you visit. When you visit." She spoke as if I were already a guest in my family's life instead of the center of it. I should have caught that phrasing. But I was tired, my chest ached, and I trusted them. I packed my bag and walked out to the garage, unaware I was stepping straight into a trap. The garage was quiet, too quiet. The sound of cars passing on the road outside felt muffled, like I was living inside a sealed box. A cot, a small space heater, and a folding table were all I had out there. Killian hung a wall calendar, a strange touch that felt more like a timer ticking down than a thoughtful gesture. At night, through the thin wall separating the garage from the mudroom, I could hear Killian's voice, low, steady, and persuasive. One evening, I caught Becky's voice cracking. "But what if they freeze everything, Killian?" He answered instantly, "That's why we need the paperwork, Becky. To protect him. The state will drain every dollar he's got the second he's declared incompetent." I lay in the dark thinking, protect me from what? I wasn't incompetent. I balanced my checkbook and still did the crossword in pen. But I was tired, my chest still ached, and I told myself Killian was just being overly cautious. A few days later, Killian walked into the garage accompanied by a woman carrying a thick leather folder. He introduced her as a mobile notary, claiming she was there to process standard estate protection documents so the state couldn't freeze my assets over my hospital bills. My head was heavy from the heavy dose of beta blockers, and dizziness washed over me every time I sat up too fast. Groggy and trusting my daughter's husband, I initialed where Killian pointed and signed the bottom line. I didn't read the fine print. I was handing over full power of attorney, signing away control of my life, my pension, and my home. A week passed. On an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, Killian walked into the garage holding a heavy cardboard box. He set it down on the concrete floor, and I caught a glimpse of a gold picture frame poking through the top flaps. My stomach dropped before my brain even fully processed what I was seeing. "Killian," I said, setting my pen down slowly. "Is that Martha's portrait?" He pulled it out. There she was, that quiet half-smile, looking like she was about to say something smart. "Why is it off the mantel?" I asked. Killian's face cracked for a fraction of a second, a sudden break in his calm facade. Well, the real estate. He cut himself off so fast it was almost violent, snapping his professional smile back into place like a rubber band. Sorry, Larry. I just thought you'd love having her close to you out here while you rest. Real estate. The words hung in the air like a struck bell. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I picked up my pen and went right back to 17 across like nothing had happened. But 35 years of running a high school teaches you one thing above all else. You never corner a liar until you know exactly what he's lying about. If you move too fast, he hides the evidence and gets his story straight. I went back to my crossword, pretending to be a frail old man clueless about the world around him. Once Killian left for work and the house went quiet, I quietly stepped off the cot and knelt beside the cardboard box. I pulled back the flaps, expecting only Martha's painting. What I found inside made my blood run ice cold. Tucked beneath the canvas, wrapped in bubble wrap, were my family's most treasured possessions. Killian had cleared out my house on Hasbrook Avenue. He had taken my grandfather's antique pocket watch, my father's military medals from World War II, and the original deed to my house. Beneath those was an official appraisal sheet from a local auction house, detailing the market value of my home and personal heirlooms. He wasn't just planning to sell my house behind my back, he was stripping my entire legacy clean, getting everything appraised so he could liquidate my life the second the sale went through. I sat on the cold garage floor, staring at my wife's picture and my family's stolen history. The fog of the beta blockers cleared instantly, replaced by a sharp, cold determination. They thought I was an old, helpless man waiting to fade away in a garage. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The principal was still in the building, and the lesson was about to begin. I couldn't call my son directly on my hijacked cell phone, but I still had connections in the town I'd served for over 3 decades. 2 days after finding my family's stolen history under the workbench, Donna, the waitress at the diner who had known me for 20 years, dropped off a small plastic bag of prescription vitamins through the side garage window under the guise of neighborly kindness. Inside the pill bottle was a tiny paper note with a cell phone number written in dark blue ink. Donna had tracked down Paul Hopper. Paul was 16 years old when I pulled him out of a bloody stairwell fight at Kingston High. He was an angry foster kid with a busted lip and eyes that said the world had already given up on him. I sat with him 3 lunch periods a week for 2 years, wrote his college recommendations, and watched him earn a badge. He was now a senior detective with the Kingston Police Department. Every single Christmas for 20 years, a card arrived in my mailbox. Thank you for seeing me. Mr. Parker. Later that afternoon, a modest black sedan pulled into Killian's driveway. Paul stepped out dressed in civilian clothes, carrying a heavy brown paper bag as if he were just an old student stopping by to visit his sick former principal. Becky was inside watching the kids, and Killian was at his insurance office in Poughkeepsie. We had maybe 15 minutes. Mr. Parker, Paul said softly, stepping into the dim garage. He said it with the same quiet reverence he had used when standing in front of my desk 20 years ago. I heard about the heart attack. Donna called me Paul. I kept my voice low, pointing to the cardboard box hidden beneath the workbench. My son-in-law is stealing my life. Paul didn't gasp, panic, or ask if I was confused. He simply set the brown paper bag down on the folding table and began unpacking it with methodical care. A tin of butter cookies, a folded newspaper, and a massive 5-pound bag of birdseed. He unzipped the bottom seam of the birdseed bag and reached deep into the seeds, pulling out a small black prepaid burner phone. Untraceable, Paul whispered, handing it to me. Keep it hidden, keep it charged, and only call my direct cell. Whatever you signed with that notary gave him legal cover. If I roll up here with a badge right now, he lawyers up in an hour, hides the money, and we lose him. We need a paper trail and we need proof before he knows we're looking. That night, Paul made a private call from his police cruiser to my son Liam in Napa Valley. When Liam answered, expecting another polite update from Killian, Paul laid out the brutal truth. His father was sleeping on a cot in a cold garage, his phone was monitored, and his entire estate was being liquidated. Liam told me later that the kitchen floor beneath his feet felt like it tilted 90 degrees. He gripped a stainless steel prep table to stay upright while 15 cooks worked around him, completely unaware that their chef's world had just fractured into pieces. When Liam logged into my online banking portal using my master password, Martha's birthday, what he uncovered went far beyond simple theft. Killian hadn't just drained my savings. 3 days prior, using the fraudulent power of attorney, Killian had submitted official paperwork to the state pension board to permanently transfer my $6,000 monthly pension benefit into a joint account under Becky's name. Worse yet, buried in the digital paper trail was a filed medical petition containing a forged psychiatric assessment declaring that I was suffering from severe, irreversible dementia and cognitive incompetence. Killian was setting up the legal groundwork to strip away my full civil rights, ensuring that even if I tried to speak up, The court would dismiss my words as the delusions of a senile old man. "He's trying to erase you legally, Chef," Paul told Liam over the encrypted line. "He wants your dad declared incompetent before the real estate closing goes through so nobody can question the deed transfer." Over the line, 3,000 miles away, my son took a deep, shaky breath, his grief hardening into pure, cold steel. "Tell my dad to hold on," Liam said quietly. "I'm going to pull every transaction, every line item, and every forged signature he ever made. I'm going to build a cage out of numbers, and we're going to lock him in it." For 6 long weeks, my life turned into a quiet war of attrition. Out in Napa Valley, every night after the last dinner order was served, Liam sat at a corner table in his empty restaurant with his laptop glowing in the dark. An executive chef running a high-end kitchen knows how to manage 200 covers a night without losing a single ticket. That precise discipline translates flawlessly to forensic accounting. Line by line, Liam built what Paul called an ironclad spreadsheet. He traced every dollar of my $6,000 monthly pension since I had been moved into that garage. The numbers told a horrifying story of pure greed. $1,200 a month went to a lease payment for a new Chevy Silverado registered to Killian. Thousands more were funneled into minimum payments across 3 maxed-out credit cards Killian had run up. Hundreds were transferred to a real estate lawyer's office in downtown Kingston to fast-track the quiet sale of my house on Hasbrook Avenue. Not one single dollar had gone toward my medical bills or my care. The phrase Killian used every time Becky questioned him, "We're drowning in Dad's medical bills," was a calculated lie. While Liam built the trap from 3,000 miles away, I had to survive in that garage. Killian kept my heart medications on a high wooden shelf near the rafters. I had been using a small wooden step stool in the corner, but one chilly Thursday evening the step stool was gone. Needing my beta blockers and feeling tightness in my chest, I dragged a heavy rusted paint can over to the wall. At 73, common sense sometimes takes a back seat to necessity. I stepped onto the lid. The metal buckled under my weight and I tumbled sideways, crashing hard against the concrete floor. Pain shot up my arm as my forearm slammed into the sharp edge of the workbench, leaving a deep purple bruise. Killian came storming out through the mudroom door. For one fleeting second I thought, there he is. There's the son-in-law who cares. Then he saw the dented paint can, and his face hardened into disgust. "Larry, what the hell are you doing?" he snapped. "You could have broken a hip. Do you have any idea how reckless that is?" "I needed my pills, Killian," I rasped from the floor, holding my bruised arm. "I couldn't reach the shelf." "Where is the step stool?" "I took it inside," Killian said, looking down at me like I was a clumsy child. "And now you're climbing on paint cans like an idiot. You're completely incapable of taking care of yourself." Without helping me up, he grabbed the paint can, carried it out, and locked the door behind him. He never brought the step stool back. I sat on the cold concrete, remembering what Detective Paul Hopper had warned me about, control disguised as concern. As October rolled in, the nights in the Hudson Valley turned bitter cold. The real estate closing date on my house was drawing near, and Killian was growing anxious. He needed me weak and compliant. One freezing Tuesday night, as the temperature dropped toward 30 degrees, the space heater in the garage suddenly clicked off. I checked the outlet. It was dead. The main breaker feeding the garage outlets had been manually flipped off from inside the house. Killian had intentionally cut my heat. I lay on that narrow cot wrapped in 2 thin blankets, my teeth chattering, my old bones aching. I realized what he was doing. He was deliberately freezing me out, trying to deteriorate my physical health so severely that I would be bedridden and unable to stand up or speak when the closing paperwork arrived. He wanted a broken, silent old man who couldn't fight back. I huddled under those blankets in the freezing dark, staring at the outline of Martha's portrait. I didn't cry. Larry Parker did not cry over a cold room or a purple bruise. Instead, a cold, unbreakable resolve settled deep inside my chest. Killian thought he was breaking me. He had no idea that every icy hour I endured was just another coal feeding the fire of the reckoning that was about to crash down on his head. 6 weeks after Paul handed me that hidden burner phone, I was sitting on my cot eating a cold can of chicken soup. The air in the garage was biting. Suddenly, I heard a car door slam in the driveway. It wasn't the rumble of Killian's Silverado, but a smaller rental sedan. Before I could stand, the garage door creaked open, and there stood Liam, framed by the autumn light. He was still wearing his white chef's jacket, having driven straight from JFK Airport after a red-eye flight from California without taking time to change. "Dad?" Liam whispered, his voice cracking clean in half. My son took one look at me, sitting on a narrow cot in a freezing garage, clutching cold soup, wrapped in thin blankets, with a deep purple bruise on my forearm, and something shattered behind his eyes. His professional composure as an executive chef melted into pure protective fury. "Dad, what did they do to you?" Liam choked out, rushing across the concrete and dropping to his knees beside my cot. He grabbed my hands, his fingers trembling with emotion. Before I could speak, heavy footsteps came sprinting across the gravel driveway. Killian burst through the door, his face flushed, reaching for control of a story that was already over. "Well, look who finally decided to show up," Killian barked, instantly performing for an imaginary audience. "The superstar chef, flying in whenever it's convenient while Becky and I drown taking care of your father. Do you know how much we've poured into keeping him alive?" Liam slowly stood up. He didn't scream or wave his arms. He just stood there in his chef's jacket, cold and motionless. "Why is my father living in an unheated garage, Killian?" Liam's voice was dangerously low. "Why is he covered in bruises? And why has every single dollar of his pension gone toward your Silverado lease and credit cards instead of his care?" Killian's face went pale for a second, but his arrogance quickly returned. "You think this is easy?" Killian sneered. "If you think you can do a better job, take him. Take the burden off our hands." "I am taking him," Liam said flatly, "and you're going to answer for every single cent you stole." Without another word, Liam wrapped my coat around my shoulders, grabbed my small bag and Martha's portrait, and guided me into his rental car. That afternoon, we drove straight to a lawyer's office in downtown Kingston and officially revoked the fraudulent power of attorney, completely demolishing Killian's legal shield. When my monthly pension checks stopped hitting his account, absolute panic took over Killian. Drowning in debt, his leased Silverado payments past due, he made a desperate move to fast-track the illegal sale of my house on Hasbrook Avenue using the revoked documents. He lied to the title company, claiming I was too ill to attend the closing. The closing took place on a gray Tuesday morning at a prestigious law office off Wall Street in Kingston. Killian sat across from the buyer, signing final deed transfers, one signature away from pocketing $600,000 that didn't belong to him. He walked out clutching the signed purchase agreement, feeling like a rich man. But he never made it to his driver's door. Detective Paul Hopper was waiting right there in the parking lot alongside two uniformed officers. "Killian Donovan," Paul called out, holding up an arrest warrant. "Put your hands where we can see them." Panicking, Killian threw the paperwork into the air and lunged toward his Chevy Silverado to make a desperate run for it. But before he could even turn the key, a marked Kingston police cruiser sped around the corner and slammed its bumper against the front of his Silverado, blocking him in completely. Officers pulled Killian roughly out of the truck, throwing him against the hood in full view of real estate lawyers and local townspeople on Wall Street. Metal cuffed his wrists with a sharp snap. "You're under arrest for felony financial exploitation of the elderly, forgery, grand larceny, and fraud," Paul stated coldly. On the spot, the $600,000 transaction was frozen by court order. The arrogant man who had locked his father-in-law in a garage was led away in handcuffs, completely ruined. Becky's involvement in this story did not end with a heroic realization, and I think telling it honestly means admitting how deeply painful it was for a father to witness. She was not arrested alongside Killian on Wall Street, but 3 days later, Detective Paul Hopper brought her into the precinct on Garrigan Drive for a formal interview. She walked into that interrogation room fiercely defending her husband, convinced that Killian was the victim of a terrible misunderstanding, and that Liam and I were acting out of spite. Then Paul sat down across from her and laid out Liam's ironclad spreadsheet, line by line, transaction by transaction. For 4 agonizing hours, Paul walked my daughter through 6 weeks of bank statements, forged notary filings, and wire transfers. Becky stared at the paper trail showing where my pension money had actually gone. $1,200 a month for Killian's Silverado, thousands in credit card debt for luxury purchases she had never seen, and payments to a real estate attorney to sell her childhood home out from under her father. She saw the forged psychiatric petition declaring her own father mentally incompetent, a document Killian had drafted while whispering sweet reassurances to her in the kitchen. By late afternoon, the thick wall of denial completely collapsed. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Her entire 11-year marriage had been built on a foundation of manipulation and deceit. She hadn't been protecting her father. She had been weaponized against him by the man who claimed to love her. Sitting in that sterile room, Becky broke down into uncontrollable sobs. Realizing the full extent of the nightmare, she agreed to cooperate fully with the Ulster County District Attorney's Office. Under an agreement granting her immunity from prosecution, Becky disclosed everything. She detailed the late-night whispers, the way Killian engineered moving me out to the garage, and how he lied about my medical bills to keep her compliant. A month later, Becky filed for divorce. She packed up what little belonged to her, surrendered the house in New Paltz to foreclosure, and moved her belongings into a small rented storage unit while staying with a friend. 11 years of marriage dissolved into a moving truck, a storage key, and a bitter, painful lesson about how fear can be used as a leash. I couldn't bring myself to call her right away. I wasn't ready, and I didn't think she expected me to be. Instead, sitting at my kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee, I wrote her a letter. Becky, I love you. I forgive you, but I need time, and I need you to respect that. You were scared, and a man who was supposed to protect you used that fear against both of us. That doesn't erase what happened in that garage, but it means I understand more than you think I do. Come see me when you're truly ready. The door isn't locked, but it needs to stay closed a while longer. Dad. 2 weeks later, a short note arrived in my mailbox. I understand. I'm so sorry. I love you too, Dad. I put both letters in my nightstand drawer, knowing that forgiveness isn't a single decision, but a choice you have to keep making every day. The legal system moved with cold precision. Faced with Liam's forensic accounting, the forged documents, and his ex-wife's testimony, Killian's defense team crumbled. He agreed to a guilty plea to avoid a lengthier trial. At the sentencing hearing in Ulster County Supreme Court, the judge showed zero leniency. Citing the calculated nature of his actions, the judge sentenced Killian Donovan to 8 years in an upstate New York State prison without the possibility of early parole. Furthermore, the court issued a full financial restitution order mandating the repayment of over $50,000 stolen from my pension and estate. To satisfy the judgment, the state seized Killian's prized Chevy Silverado, his personal accounts, and his private assets, putting them all up for public auction. The man who tried to strip away my dignity lost every single thing he owned, trading his custom truck and comfortable life for a cold prison cell. The fraudulent attempt to sell my home was officially thrown out by the Ulster County Probate Court a month after Killian's arrest. On a cool, crisp Saturday morning in late October, Liam and I drove back to Hasbrook Avenue together. Unlocking the front door of the house Martha and I bought in 1979 felt like stepping back into my own skin. This was the house where I had raised 2 children, where Martha had spent 40 years tending her garden, and where every squeaking floorboard held a memory that no greedy liar in a leased truck could ever erase. Killian had tried to strip away my dignity, my money, and my home, treating my life like nothing more than a line item on a spreadsheet. But walking through that front hallway, hearing the familiar quiet hum of the radiators, I knew he had failed. Liam flew back to New York for a full week to help me settle in. He moved through that house with an effortless grace that brought tears to my eyes. He didn't need to ask where anything was kept in the kitchen. He didn't ask which drawer held the chef's knives, nor where his mother kept her spices. He moved through those rooms like he had been born in them, which in every way that matters he had. That afternoon, we unwrapped Martha's portrait from the bubble wrap. Liam brought a small hammer from the basement, and together we walked over to the fireplace in the living room. I held the golden frame steady, while Liam tapped the hanging wire back onto the exact same nail that had held it since 1994. There she was again. Resting over the mantelpiece, looking down at us with that quiet, clever half-smile, as if she had been watching over the whole ordeal, waiting patiently for her boy to bring her husband back home. Later that evening, Liam opened the lower pantry cabinet and pulled out Martha's heavy cast-iron skillet, the same pan so heavy I could barely lift it one-handed. He set it on the stove, turned on the flame, and began making Sunday gravy the way his mother had taught him 30 years ago. He browned the garlic, seared the meat, and let the tomato sauce simmer low and slow for hours. Soon, the entire house filled with the warm, incredible aroma of garlic, basil, and slow-simmered tomatoes, a smell that hadn't filled those hallways in 4 long years. It was the scent of my youth, the scent of my marriage, and the scent of unconditional family love. We sat down at the dining room table that night and ate a hot meal cooked by my son's hands using my late wife's recipe, in the very kitchen where she had passed down her wisdom long before either of us understood how desperately we would need it. We didn't talk about Killian, we didn't talk about the garage, and we didn't talk about courtrooms. We just talked about Liam's restaurant in Napa, the kids I used to mentor at Kingston High, and how much Martha would have loved to see him standing at that stove. On Monday morning, Liam packed his bags to head back to California. His restaurant had its soft opening 2 weeks later, and it was a resounding success. But before he left, he stood on the front porch on Hasbrook Avenue, wrapped his arms around me, and told me he'd be back every single holiday. I want to close this story with something for everyone listening today. A thief can manipulate paperwork, he can lie to a notary, and he can lock an old man in a garage. He can try to take your money, your home, and your pride, but he can never touch the things that truly matter. Martha was always here, in these oak walls, in that heavy cast-iron skillet, and in my son's hands moving around her kitchen like no time had passed at all. She was watching over me the whole time, and when I needed her most, she sent my boy home to bring me back to myself. My name is Larry Parker, and in my life, family and honor come before everything else, always. If you were moved by this story of real justice, resilience, and a father's unyielding bond with his son, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment below letting me know where in the world you're watching from today. And subscribe so you never miss another story on Dad's Ultimate Payback. Stay strong, hold your ground, and I'll see you on the next one.